Hey everyone, I'm Lyle Burks with the Viking Speaks. And this is the 48 Laws of Power. Hey everyone, I'm Lyle Burks with the Viking Speaks. Welcome back to the 90-day video challenge. We have day 61. 48 Laws of Power, Law 19. This was kind of interesting, so it's going to be a little bit of a different video today, but check this out. Law 19. Know who you're dealing with, and do not offend the wrong person. There are many different kinds of people in the world, and you can never assume that everyone will react to your strategies in the same way. Deceive or outmaneuver some people, and they will spend the rest of their lives seeking revenge. There are wolves in lamb's clothing, so choose your victims and opponents carefully. Then never offend or deceive the wrong person. So I think we've all probably had some sort of a run-in with somebody who just fit that bill, right? Someone who maybe they were easily offended, or you didn't know enough about their history and their past or who they were as a person that something you did or said could have set them off or potentially offended them in a way that not only were their feelings hurt or something of that nature, I'm not so much worried about the feelers, but they were disrespected. Now there's a significant difference in being offended and disrespected. And I think he's leaning more towards that. So, prime example, I've had that happen to me in a recent past where somebody violated what I consider kind of an unspoken law, bro code, and you feel disrespected, violated. And it completely changes your perception of that person. So, while I won't seek out revenge on this individual, there are other people that might. So with that, he breaks down 5 different persons and types of people in this particular category. I want to go into detail with them, so I'm actually going to read verbatim from them. So with that, here are the 5 different categories of opponents, suckers, and victims. That's how he describes it. So here we go. The arrogant and proud man. Although he may initially disguise it, in this man's touchy pride, it makes him very dangerous. Any perceived slight will lead to vengeance of overwhelming violence. You may also say to yourself, but I only said such and such as a party where everyone else was drunk. It doesn't matter. There is no sanity behind his overreaction, so do not waste your time trying to figure him out. If at any point in your dealings with this person you sense an oversensitive or overreactive pride, flee. Whatever you're hoping for from this isn't worth it. The hopelessly insecure man is related to the proud and arrogant type, but less violent. If he feels his ego and pride has been damaged or offended, he will let it simmer and eat away at you slowly. If he feels as though this has been done or you think this has been done, disappear for a long time, or he will nibble you to death. Mr. Suspicion, another variant of the breeds above. This is a future Joe Stalin. He sees what he wants to see, and usually the worst in other people, and imagines that everyone is after him. Mr. Suspicion is in fact the least dangerous of the 3. Genuinely unbalanced, he is easy to deceive, just as Stalin himself was constantly deceived. Play on his suspicions and get him to turn against other people, but if you do become the target of his suspicion, watch out. The servant with a long memory. If hurt or deceived, this man will not show arrogant on the surface, but will calculate and wait. Then, when he's in position to turn the tables, he will exact his revenge marked by a cold-blooded shrewdness. Recognize this man by his calculations and cunning in different areas of his life. He is usually cold and unaffectionate. Be doubly careful of this snake, and if you have somehow injured him, either crush him completely or get out of his sight. And finally, the plain and unassuming, often unintelligent man. Your ears perk up when you find such a victim, but this man is a lot harder to deceive than you may imagine. Falling for a ruse often takes intelligence and imagination, a sense of possible reward, but the blunt man will not take the bait because he doesn't recognize it. He's unaware. And the danger of this man is not that he will harm you or seek revenge, but that he'll merely waste your time. Have a test ready to mark, and if he doesn't understand it or is too literal, move on. Okay, so now you know the 5 different type of personnel you'll come into contact with in this law. I'm going to cover the 2 basic transgressions here, some that are more prevalent and kind of drive the point home. So, Genghis Khan, point 1. A lot of people have heard that name. If you haven't, he was a Mongol conqueror. And at the point in time in this story, there was a sheikh in the Middle East. Muhammad, the Shah of Khwarizm. And I'm sorry I butchered that, but either way, he forged many wars and had this massive empire that stretched west to Turkey all the way down south to Afghanistan. This guy had a huge army. He could mobilize 200,000 plus soldiers like that. Anytime, any day. Getting pretty big for his britches. He felt like he was Mr. Man, So in 1219, Muhammad received an embassy from a new tribal leader in the east called Genghis Khan. And what Genghis Khan was trying to do is he wanted to reestablish the silk trading route. And what he promised was he talked to Muhammad, sent him a message, said, in exchange for your cooperation, we will become allies, and we won't attack you, we won't anything, we'll maintain peace between our 2 great empires. Well, Muhammad had no idea who this guy was and thought, who is this guy, random small-time leader from middle of nowhere Mongolia? He felt as if, how dare this simpleton talk to me as if we were equals? So he ignored the initial offer. Khan tries again. This time he sends a band of 100 camels with the finest and rarest treasures he had brought back from China during one of his raids. The governor underneath the sheik seized the caravan prior to it getting to the capital. Took all the riches for himself, slaughtered everybody. Well, when Genghis Khan figured this out, he thought, okay, there's no way that this governor did this under the influence or ruling of the sheik. Had to be a mistake. He did it on its own. So, a final time, he sends more ambassadors with a message directly to the sheik. This time, thinking like, is this guy for real? Continuing to send me this? Here, let me help you understand where you're at, bro. He had one of the messengers beheaded and then shaved the other 2's head and sent them back to Genghis Khan. Now, at that time, having your head shaved in Mongol culture was a massive dishonor, horribly disrespectful, which was the intent of the message. So, Genghis Khan got the message. Now, if you remember who Genghis Khan is in history, this guy was brutal, ruthless conqueror. Like he was the real deal. He sent a final message back to the sheik. Says, you have chosen war. What will come, and we'll let God decide. So eventually, what ended up happening is Genghis Khan began his pursuit on this sheik and his empire in the Middle East using guerrilla warfare tactics. They had become incredibly skilled at firing the bow and arrow from horse mount. So they were very evasive. They couldn't be taken down in the traditional route. So, like you have the 2 people, boom, boom, 2 bodies on, 2 armies colliding. It wasn't that way. They were kind of like in the American Revolution, guerrilla warfare tactics. They were just here and there and everywhere and really hard to nail down. Eventually, he captured the capital and he captured that governor. And how he killed him was he poured molten steel. Or was it steel? No, I'm sorry. He poured molten silver as a direct message back to him for stealing all the goods that were originally meant for the sheik as a peace offering and a unity. He poured that down his eyes and his ears and killed him that way. And then eventually took over the entire kingdom itself. The sheik fled in fear when he found out what was going on, and he ended up dying a year later, alone, cold, broke. So, you pissed off the wrong guy, you made you pay for it. You lost your entire empire instead of being like, okay, let me hear this guy out. Didn't choose your mark very well. The second transgression, in the 1920s, I believe it was? No, excuse me, the teens. Prior to the Roaring 20s, and then eventually into the 20s. A band of con artists formed this massive ring in Denver, Colorado. And essentially they had like this whole mafia going with that, where they were the most skilled, notorious cons for their day and age and their time. And so they would go all over the country making these ridiculous schemes where they would swindle farmers, ranchers, and various what they called simpletons out of their hard-earned money. Joe Fury was the ringleader of this whole con artist ring. And when he met a J. Frank Norfleet, a cattleman, down in, I believe it was Texas. Yeah, Fort Worth, Texas. Swindled him out of his life savings of $45,000. When basically he promised him riches. He said, this is guaranteed. We're going to be able to get it. We're very skilled at what we do. If you'll lend us the money, we'll return it to you tenfold. So, after lending the money, it was a short time later that he got his riches back in the form of a few good dollar bills wrapped around a mountain of newspaper clippings cut in the shape of dollar bills. And this had been done to quite a few people. And most of the time, what they counted on was these simpletons being so embarrassed that they would just quietly go away in shame for having been duped like they were. Well, Norfleet wasn't that guy. He was pissed. And when he found out what had happened, he went to the police, told the detectives what happened, and he said, if you don't do something about it and catch these guys, I'll catch them. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. Well, the detective said, sorry, there's nothing we can do. You're out of your money. And we have no way to pin these guys down. They're a big ring. So Norfleet said, fine. And he started chasing them down. And he didn't care how long it took, what resources he had to expend, and what pain it cost him. He chased every single one of those guys down, even across the pond. He went to England. He went to Canada. Gosh, he went to and Mexico. He went to Mexico too, chasing these guys down until he had every single one of the people of that ring either turn themselves in over fear of this guy, because his reputation began to spread pretty quickly across the country. Some of them, when they found out he was on their tail, turned themselves in out of fear. Others tried to flee. And if he didn't catch them the first time, he followed them relentlessly until he captured them. Every single one of them. Until eventually he captured Joe Fury down in Jacksonville, Florida. And he personally hauled that dude into Texas and had him stand trial for everything. 5 years it took him to do this. He spent 5 years of his life with no other purpose than to seek revenge on these assholes for what they did. It ruined his marriage, left him bankrupt, and pretty much destroyed his life in every other facet. But in his dying words, he said he died a satisfied and happy man because he saw them brought to justice. So, be careful when you try to use some sort of manipulation or anything against people that you deem as potentially simple. In the story of Mice and Men, I showed that earlier, Lenny. He was one where, it wasn't going to sink in, but because of that, it would either waste your time and resources, or if they did in any way feel offended or disrespected in that manner, they would be furious, and there's nothing you could do to stop them. There would be no logical way to make them halt. So, just, be cautious with something like this. Personally, don't even bother. But anyway, interesting law, pretty cool historical examples. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Much love. Bye now.